It is very natural for human beings to feel unworthy when we address God. Most of the saints throughout 20 centuries had this experience of being insignificant when facing God, of feeling unworthy while praying, while experiencing God's presence. It's very normal and natural to feel childlike when you relate to God. We realize that we are creation and God is the Creator. Isaiah is calling the people of Israel, "You are my servant." And John the Baptist will say of himself, "I am unworthy to untie his sandals. The man coming after me is the one who will baptize with the Holy Spirit." Both Isaiah and John the Baptist in today's readings experience the sense of unworthiness, of being really insignificant when you think of the grandeur and magnificent splendor of God. God can do everything. And can we do anything good without God? And yet, when Isaiah gives voice to God in his prophetic writing, in the second part of today's first reading, God says, "It is not enough for you to be my servant. It is not enough for you to be my servant. It is okay to feel like a servant facing his or her Lord, but God says it's not enough. I don't want you to feel like my servant. I don't want you to have this sense of inferiority when you talk to me, when you relate to me. It's not enough to be my servant." Well, what is enough if not being God's servant? If God doesn't want us to feel so insignificant, so unworthy, what are we called to be? If not God's servants, then what? Children, perhaps? But even better answer comes in today's second reading. Paul is just opening his first letter to his friends and, I guess, drinking buddies in Corinth. Paul established that church in Corinth. A number of years later, he is writing to them, saying, "I, Paul, the apostle of Jesus Christ by the will of God, to the people of God in Corinth, justified by Christ and called to be holy." Called to be holy. Ping, ping, that's the winner answer. God doesn't want you to feel like a servant. God calls you to be holy. Be holy as your God is holy. Well, you say, hold on over there. How can I be as holy as God is? The answer is you cannot. There is no way any of you, there is no way I can be as holy as God is. None of us can even attempt to be as holy as God is. And yet, that's what we are called to be. Not servants, not subjects, not creatures relating to their Creator somewhere up there. But we are called to be holy. We are called to acknowledge that there is a great difference between God and us, but at the same time, that difference cannot stop us from being holy. How is that ever possible? Think of you, a grown-up, talking to a child. Perhaps I can ask a child to come and help me demonstrate. I need a young child. I see a visiting family. Could you borrow us one of your children? Could you let us loan one of your children, please? Yeah, please. Come over, my friend. Okay, I will invite you to come over. No. Okay, can I ask you to come with me for a moment? Oh, you are grown up, but that's good. What's your name? Brett. Brett, imagine that you... How old are you?
10.
10. How tall were you when you were 5 years old? As tall as you are today, or a little shorter?
A little shorter.
So get down on your level of 5 years old. Like that, right? Okay. So imagine Brett is 5 years old. And if you are an adult, you are on a different level than your child, right? Your child is right here, and you are up there. What do you do when you want to engage a child? Exactly. You lower yourself to the child's level. Then we can have a conversation. My friend Brett can look me into eyes. I can look into his or her eyes. Now, what happens when your knees get tired? You get a walker, right? No. When your knees get tired, Brett, don't be afraid. You embrace your child and you raise him to be with you, right? And you carry your child on your hand. So you can continue having the same conversation, being on the same level. It's difficult to have a valid conversation if I am that tall, 6.8, and you are only 4.5. It's almost impossible to have a relationship if there is a big chasm separating you from your partner. And that's exactly what God is doing. God is lowering himself to our level first. Good job. To look us into eye, and then when God's knees get tired, God is raising us up to continue the same conversation. We can become holy not because we are so good, but we can become as holy as God is because God is lowering himself to be with us. And then God is lifting us up. God is raising us up to be with God on the same level. Achieving holiness is not our achievement. Well, you deserve a reward for being with me and helping me preach. But being holy is not something you or I can do on our own. Being holy means being lifted up by God. Being called to be God's partner. Being called to work with God, to look God into God's eyes and say, yes, I will work with you. I will allow you to lift me up and be your partner in this wonderful experience of life. Brett, thank you for helping me. Go back to your mom. There is a great story, a true story, from Bavaria, from Middle Ages. King of Bavaria, King Henry III did never feel like being a king. His vocation, he thought, was to be a monk. He has always wanted to be a monk, to live in a monastery and have a spiritual life, to devote his life to studying the scriptures and praying. And yet, he ends up sitting on the throne on the Kingdom of Bavaria. After a short period of being a king, he was so fed up with politics, imagine that he decided to abdicate and become a monk. So without letting anyone know, he simply walked to the local abbey. He knocked on the door of the abbey, asked to see Father Abbot, and he told him, "Father, I have decided that I want to become a monk. Please accept me as your novice in training." Of course, the abbot knew precisely who is he talking to. So he says, "Your Highness, being a monk is not an easy job. You are used to giving orders. You are used to being obeyed. But as a monk, you will vow obedience. You will have to do as you are told. Can you do that?" Henry said, "Father, yes, I can and I will. I will obey you as if Christ was speaking through you." And then the abbot said, "Very well, my son. If you want to obey me, please do. You will go back to the palace. You will assume the throne again, and you will do your best as the King of Bavaria. That's what I am asking of you to do." And that is what King Henry III did. He gave up being a monk, and he did the best he could as a king of the small country of Bavaria. He ended up being a saint, Saint Henry III. You see, there is no one way of becoming holy. You can be holy without being a monk living in the abbey. You can be holy while you are a congressman or senator. I don't know many of them, but you can. You can be holy as a cleaning lady. You can be holy as a cab driver. You can be holy as a CEO or a homeless person. You can be holy as someone who sings very well and as someone who is told not to sing in the church. There is no precondition to being holy. There is no one way of doing that. Our job as called to be holy is to allow ourselves to be lifted up by God and to be God's partners wherever God has placed you. Whether you are a cleaning lady, or you are a doctor, or you are a king, or you are a priest, your job is the same. Be holy. Be God's partner. Allow God to lift yourself up and be holy as God is.